I'm Nurse Jessica Seitz, along with Nurse Erica. We're Nurses Uncorked, the podcast that takes nursing facts with nursing comedy and makes a little cocktail out of it. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Nurses Uncorked. I am Nurse Jessica Seitz, and I have with me my lovely co-host, Nurse Erica. You guys all know who Nurse Erica is. And before we get into this week's podcast, I wanted to put out there a little bit of a trigger warning for people before you continue to listen. This particular podcast episode here on Nurses Uncorked deals with the topic of suicide. So if that is a very triggering topic for you or something that you're extremely sensitive hearing about, I would advise that this is not the podcast for you to continue to listen to. But we did want to put that out there just so that people are aware of what the topic is, because it's a tough one. Also, before we get into it, we also wanted to mention and not forget to mention that there is a National Suicide and Crisis Prevention Hotline for anybody that listens to this podcast. If you at any point feel like you need help or you need to reach out if you're having any type of suicidal thoughts, dark thoughts, there is always somebody there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's really simple. You don't even have to dial a whole phone number. You can dial 988, and that will connect you to a crisis counselor that you can get in contact with immediately, or the long form phone number is 1-800-442-HOPE. So with that, I'm going to give it to Nurse Erica.
Yeah, and I wanted to point out you can also text that number 988.
Oh, okay, good.
If that's helpful for some people. So you may have recently heard me share a story about a 28-year-old Ohio registered nurse that sadly took her own life, and her family found a letter entitled "A Letter to My Abuser" afterwards, and she wrote it about 2 months prior. We are honored today to be joined by Tristan's dad, Ron Smith, and her sister, Sarah Smith. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
We are really grateful that you guys have the courage to discuss what I can only imagine is an impossible subject.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that as much as it hurts, if we can reach out to even just one person, if we can help one person, then, we have that. And I think that Tristan would want that.
Oh, without a doubt. It's to help other people. And Tristan was all about helping people, and she loved her job. And so we're going to continue that work for her.
It is titled "Letter to My Abuser." Ever since I was young, I expressed interest in healthcare and becoming a nurse, so I began my study. I gave my heart, my body, and my mind to you, dedicated long hours and days, and gave you my all. I have cried with patients, with their families, and for them. I held their hands, and they held mine as I moved forward in my nursing career. My patients and their families have been there for me, supported me, and reminded me why I do what I do. I thought that was enough. This would be all I needed to carry me through my career. I told you I would be there for the good and the bad, but you have taken my heart and slowly crushed the goodness it had. You love-bombed me with affection, and you told me that I was going into a career that matters. I could make a difference. You made me feel comfortable despite the rumors of your abusive past. Rumors I didn't want to believe. The compliments, the pizzas, and the thank you letters gradually had less meaning to me. The staff I worked beside began to go away. In your eyes, these staff were unnecessary, but it came at a high cost for the advertised quality care provided to our patients by those who were left, that we put up with so much. But then when we dare to think we are finally going to get the love and support we deserve, we get a pizza party and free pens for healthcare heroes. I so desperately want to continue to help people, but I cannot stay in this abusive relationship. Each day you ask me to do more with less. You beat me to the point that my body and mind are black, bruised, and bleeding out. I'm only sorry to my patients and colleagues. You deserve so much better, but my abusive partner is relentless. If I stay, I will lose my sanity and possibly my life forever.
I would like to start with maybe asking a little bit about Tristan's past. Like, when did Tristan become a nurse? Did she always know she wanted to be a nurse? Some questions like that. What her nursing background? I don't know if Ron, if you want to talk about it, or Sarah, but we'd love to hear about that. How long she's been in, was a nurse, and kind of dive into that a little bit.
Well, she wanted to become a nurse. She knew this way back in high school. She actually went to a program. It was called Allied Health here locally, and she set a course on becoming a nurse. She went through that program. She got a $2,000 scholarship to attend Sinclair College, which is a community college here. And she started her learning at Sinclair, well, actually through Allied Health to Sinclair, and then earned her license to become an RN. So she knew at a early point in her life, her career path, what she wanted to do. I think that she felt like it was a calling.
Mm-hmm.
She was probably one of the easiest of all the kids. Sorry, Sarah, to raise, but we never had to tell her to get up. We never had to tell her to do her homework. She always done it. She was very focused. She was a very focused student and knew what she wanted.
What year did she graduate, more or less? How long was she a nurse for?
Well, she was a nurse for 5 years. She graduated 2013.
Okay.
High school. And then she started her studies while she was still being an STNA. And it took her some time to do that, but she got through it. And then she worked at the local hospital here for 5 years. And then she did a little bit of traveling nurse after that. She went out to Sacramento, California, and spent 6
she
months
was in
there.
the ER, right? She was an ER nurse?
Yes.
What do you think drew her to the ER?
That's where she's going to really help people that were needing the help the most. I think that she liked the energy there. She just wanted to be in that action, so to speak, I think.
I understand that. I think a lot of nurses are either, I call them adrenaline junkies. Like I'm a labor and delivery nurse, so I understand that. And ER was also something I looked at as well, because there's a lot of excitement. I mean, there's a lot of things going on, and so I think nurses are either one or the other. They're either they like that
I'm the other
type of, exactly, or they like a slower paced environment. Yeah, Erica's the other. I prefer
organized, not slow.
So ER is definitely, it takes a special nurse to be an ER nurse. It really does. It can be a challenging, rough place. So it takes a very, very special person. It's not the easiest nursing job to be in, for sure.
Yeah.
No, and she liked the adrenaline. She liked the high pace. She liked having that immediate feeling of making a difference and stuff like that. She always told me that she would be bored if she wasn't in the emergency department. That was just something that she always kind of thrived in.
Yeah, it's ever changing. You rarely, every case is different. Everything that comes in the door is different. So it definitely is something that it's not monotony. That's for sure. There's always something new. So
Sarah,
I definitely
were you
appreciate
surprised that Tristan became a nurse, or did that seem like something that she would do growing up with her?
Oh, it was so natural. growing up, Tristan was, 7 years younger than me. So she always had this sense of maturity about her. And she always just had this need to help people. Like she always was just like, well, how can I help, do this or that? And so, and with her starting and becoming an STNA, as soon as she could, I mean, I don't think there was really any doubt at all.
And she was a big animal lover, from what I understand.
Oh God, yeah. Oh yeah.
Huge animal lover. Huge. She found this little kitty that strayed, and she had to rescue it. And then she went to a shelter and rescued her dog, Calypso. He was a blue pit bull. And I tell you what, that dog had the life. The dog had the life. I mean, she would exercise the dog. She loved longboarding. It's kind of like skateboarding, but they call it longboarding. She would be on her longboard going down a hill or down the road, and the dog's right beside her. And it was just, and even on her bike, she would ride her bike, and there's the dog. And she doesn't live real far away from me, and she would constantly ride her bike over, and here comes Calypso and Tristan.
So Calypso won the lottery, I guess.
Yes.
Calypso sounds like he had it good.
He did. He did.
Did either of you take in her pets?
My sister, our other sister, took in her cat Sphinx, and then we found a wonderful home for Callie. So
That's
big
good.
old yard, other pit bulls, to be able to play with, and just so
yeah,
that was
the cat's name was Spanx.
So cute. Yep. Sphinx. Yep.
Sphinx.
Oh, Sphinx.
Sphinx.
I thought I
was
was
thinking of
Spanx.
the
I'm like,
underwear.
did she have a special relationship with Spanx?
No.
Okay, that makes more sense now. Because I was like, there's got to be a story there with that.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past her.
Looking back now, was there ever a time where you noticed that Tristan maybe was struggling or wasn't as happy in her nursing career as she was in the beginning?
I made a comment to my wife probably 3 months prior to her taking her life. I said, "Do you notice a difference in Tristan? A little bit more withdrawn. I saw her sitting by herself, and but that's not uncommon for her to do that. But I sensed something was going on, but I didn't realize the depression. But
did she ever mention to you guys at any point like struggles with work, like administration, or going and talking to a manager and not being heard, or feeling like they weren't staffed appropriately? And some people aren't the kind to vocalize that to their family, just because unless you are actually working in it, sometimes, I can relate to that. You just kind of feel like you're just talking, and nobody's going to really get it. But I wonder, did she ever express anything like that to you guys ever?
No, not to me personally. I think that I shouldn't say that. She told me that if she would have talked to people at the hospital, she would have been labeled as being incapable of doing the job. She never went to the psychologist, but I think she was fearful to go to the psychologist in the ER and talk to her.
That is unfortunately all too common. Depending on the state, different state boards of nursing operate a little differently, but we are often required as part of our renewing of our license every 2 years. We're required to disclose if we've had any psychological issues or treatment, and some states ask point blank, have you had any suicidal thoughts? Things like that. And so we are supposed to disclose that. But unfortunately, what happens a lot of the time is that they then take those nurses and put them into a program that is very punitive, So instead of supporting them, realizing it had nothing to do with their ability as a nurse, they now have to do things like ongoing drug tests or be monitored for a couple of years. It's on their record. So if they go to apply in another state for licensure, it becomes a whole thing. And unfortunately, because of that, nurses often don't speak up, or they don't go and get the treatment that they need, because the fear of retaliation or risking their license that they worked so hard for is very real, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's just it's fear of being labeled. It's fear of once that's out there, that you may not be able to keep the job that you do desperately love. Or I think a lot of it is this misconception that nurses are supposed to be so strong. Like we're supposed to be able to take care of everybody and muster through it, and to admit and to go to somebody that this is taking such an emotional and mental toll on you a lot of times is hard. It's hard for nurses to do that, whether it's depression or maybe even same thing with drug abuse. A lot of people that are abusing alcohol or drugs that are healthcare workers, a lot of times they don't seek out the help because of those same scenarios, So I think that it's taboos, that those need to be broken down. It needs to be more so that healthcare workers, nurses can speak about that and be taken validly and helped.
Well, and we need state boards of nursing to really not operate in that manner, to not be so punitive towards nurses. It's not helping anyone. Sarah, in your perception, was there anything looking back that was maybe a red flag? Did you know of any issues with Tristan?
I think I probably knew more than Dad did. I've worked in customer service, the restaurant industry, for 16 years. So Tristan would reach out to me a lot after her shifts. We'd had a lot of like midnight talks just about people, and because I think that I was probably the closest thing that she had that would understand her stories and kind of like believe her. And just I'm not in healthcare, I'm not a nurse, so like I was able to help her in my own way. But I think that I could tell when something was kind of bothering her because she would call more frequently, and the conversations would last longer. And then towards the end, they wouldn't really be anything of substance like they used to be. It's like she just wanted to talk, but she didn't want to talk about it anymore. Because I think that's just a mental exhaustion. And, and like you were saying, that taboo that nurses are just supposed to be these subhuman people. It's absolutely ridiculous.
It is.
Yep.
You are still humans. And it's like the job is already stressful. And the fact that we are normalizing that when it hasn't been normalized before is absolutely insane. It's like we've lost all touch with humanity.
Yeah. It's very toxic, and the gaslighting is pervasive. You hear things like, well, welcome to nursing, all the time. If a nurse is upset that something happened inappropriately or with a patient or anything, well, you're gonna have to put on your big girl panties. You're a nurse now. Come on. We don't have time for that. Get back out there. It's not fair to nurses.
That's why people don't speak out a lot. That's why we see it, because you're just told to take it and take it and take it. And if you do express anything, you're dismissed, and so then you start internalizing everything, and it just builds and builds and builds because there is no outlet. And it's like, you don't seek help because you will be stigmatized for it. I've, had so many people reaching out to me since this letter broke, and I've heard so many of the same stories. And, if something doesn't change, there will be another Tristan and another one and another one and another one. And that breaks my heart.
Jessica and I were talking earlier today, and both of us personally know other nurses that took their own life. So this is certainly not an isolated incident, unfortunately, at all.
No.
Did she ever tell you anything specific that was going on at work, Sarah, that you can share? Any of her frustrations?
Definitely staffing shortages. You know, she kind of hit nursing at a weird time because it was during COVID and she was still pretty young. So like she got a small glimpse of pre-COVID, but it, you know, during COVID, I think that really kind of just heightened all of the issues that were already present in our healthcare system. Staffing shortages are a big thing. You know, in her letter, she referenced the being hit. I know that was a thing. Verbal abuse from all sides, not just, you know, administration, but patients. It's like you're dealing with you're dealing with humans in their most vulnerable state.
The worst day of their life. Yeah.
Exactly. And the response to that human response is anger, you know, because you don't want someone to see you as weak. So it's like, that's part of the job, but I think it just heightened. And then people were so understanding at first with COVID and with all the rules and regulations and all this stuff. And then it just kind of started to diminish. And then it just disintegrated almost overnight.
What a rough time to start out in nursing for anybody that really was just getting their bearings to do that during COVID. I can't imagine. It's hard enough trying to learn all the things that we have to learn as a new grad and coming in as a nurse. It's stressful enough. So to recently then be thrown into a pandemic,
especially
and
a pandemic that we didn't understand the disease for a long time. Everything
scary.
was an unknown. Yeah.
And you know, you're literally, everyone's rotating in and out of the COVID ward. So it's just like, you know, the risk is heightened. And you know, she talked about the lack of masks and having to wash them and reuse the same mask for weeks on end, you know, and it wasn't just that location, it's all across the country. And, you know, it just, I heard a lot of things that, you know, from an outside perspective, it's hard to grasp your head around how serious it is. Because if there's one thing I know, it's that if you're not a nurse, you don't understand nursing.
Correct.
You can understand certain aspects of it, but you don't
really
understand.
Can't appreciate it. That's true. That's true. And I think sometimes that's why nurses don't speak out to their friends or family that are non-healthcare people, because it almost feels a little bit futile. Like, yes, you can empathize with them, but you really don't get it.
It's always that saying, like, until you walk in my shoes, which sometimes I hate that phrase, but at the same time, I completely get it, because as a nurse, unless you've done it, it's very hard to explain it. You can try your best, but until you go through that on a daily basis, it's hard. One thing that I wanted to say was, like, I truly feel like the nursing profession it's always been seen as like, we're supposed to be almost robotic. We're supposed to be infallible, perfect people. And the truth is, we are human beings. We are not computers. Yes. We are not machines. We are not robots. And we do make mistakes. And the scary part is, it doesn't matter if the staffing is getting worse. You're still expected to be perfect. The pressure that puts on nurses is something that is very difficult to describe. It's very, very stressful, very, very hard, because you think, I can't even get to my patients. I can't see them in a timely manner. And then to be seen as, you've got to get all your charting done. Don't you dare make a mistake. You're going to be in big trouble. These are people's lives, is a lot. It's a lot for anybody to take. It's very, very hard to describe. And it's a tough road. That is for sure. And that's the thing, isn't it? The higher ups just aren't seeing it, or they don't want to see it. They don't care. It's still like,
they
you
know,
still have
but
to do it.
They don't want to pretend like it's real.
they don't care. To them, I think that I have talked to other people before, they're into this lean manufacturing
Yes.
mindset and do the most you can with the least amount of people.
Yeah.
And in the healthcare, you really can't operate that way
Shouldn't.
because, like Tristan said in her letter, she said you took away staff because in your eyes they were not needed,
Yes.
but
Yeah, we're expendable.
absolutely
Yeah.
needed. Um, and I feel that the administrators know. I
They
mean,
know.
if they can get away with less staffing,
They will every
people are
time
expensive.
if they can. Yeah.
Well, there's
People
no
are
And
accountability. There's no
Correct.
accountability.
Mhm.
Correct.
So it creates this world of fear and paranoia where Tristan would mention going home and just thinking about her patients, because it's like you're so understaffed that then you're worried about, oh my gosh, did I mess this up? Did I mess that
Yeah.
up? Is this person, what is my
Am
fault?
I going to get a call tomorrow that I forgot something? We will wake up in the middle of the night and go, oh my God, I forgot the pain meds for bed 4, whatever. It just never quite
Your brain doesn't
leaves
turn
us.
off. It doesn't turn
Yeah.
off. It's a constant.
But
constant
Ron,
worry.
you mentioned something important, the lean process. And I know you and I had discussed that before. I don't know if everybody is aware of that, but that came originally from the automobile industry, right?
Yeah,
You want to talk about that a little bit?
actually, it came from Japan, and the automotive
Yes.
industry picked up on it.
Okay.
And
Yes.
they call it Six Sigma. And whenever you get into the lean aspect in Six Sigma, it's not, the true purpose of it is not to work unsafe, but what can we look at in the processes to eliminate labor that's not needed?
And it was
the
never
hospitals,
meant for healthcare.
no, but they picked up on it. And unfortunately, they must see a value to having less people because they're earning more money. Labor is
Absolutely.
expensive in any business. And
And nursing
if you're
is
gonna-
the most expensive labor force in any healthcare organization.
yeah. And
And
so
yeah,
you stop and think about, the administrators. I hear so often from people that work in hospitals how they really don't. They've got the worst in healthcare insurance that in the industry.
Correct.
High deductibles and
The
high
ones
co-pays.
providing the healthcare often have the worst healthcare benefits
It-
and the
it-
most
that doesn't make
expensive.
sense.
It
That does not
doesn't.
make sense. But I
Yeah.
think the CEOs and the administrators, hey, we're saving money. This is bonus money that we're
Oh, yeah.
that we're
For
saving
each
for.
nurse less that they employ or have on a shift, that equates to increased bonuses for them at the end
Sure.
of the quarter or the end of the year. And unfortunately, that is why they often purposely understaff. You hear about calling nurses off, flexing nurses. It's not because there isn't work for them to do most of the time. It's just that per the staffing matrix, metrics,
Right.
we don't need that many nurses. Well, yes, you do. Yes, you do. You absolutely
You
do.
do. To give the
It's such
quality
a sad
care that they advertise, you have to have the quality there in place, and you have to have the staffing to give that quality. So,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, sir.
No, you're good. I was just going to say it's so sad that we have to talk about business in terms of healthcare, because business has no place in healthcare. There is no
Yes.
reason for
shouldn't.
any of this. And it shouldn't be. But
Absolutely.
yet somehow we've gotten so off track that it's all about that bottom line. And
the
it makes me
customer
angry.
service, not patients, but customers. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've actually been sent to, I think it was a 3 or 4 day conference on the whole lean process some years ago. And I knew
there's
within
training
the first
courses on
5
Six Sigma.
Yeah. I knew within the first 5 minutes sitting there going, what? this
Yeah.
is not going to work in healthcare. Are you kidding me? But they have just been pushing this narrative for so long, and it really has contributed to the downfall.
They cut a lot from the bottom. They don't cut from the top. They cut from the
Never.
bottom, and sadly,
Oh, yeah.
sadly, nurses, CNAs, we're all seen as bottom feeders. That's how I feel like they look at us, like we're just the bottom of the
A
totem pole.
necessary evil. Yeah.
Yeah, and we will function on the least amount possible. But not only that, speaking to the whole insurance thing, the more employees that they have that do not need benefits, the better. So it's better for them to have nurses that don't need insurance. That's why they bring in sometimes travel nurses, or they would rather have a travel nurse because they don't have
They
to pay
actually
these
save
these
money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you keep bringing in people that don't have experience there, that are new, that are in and out and quick turnovers. And it's more recipe for disaster. I mean, sadly, it
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah.
And that just puts strain on everybody.
Yeah.
And
Now,
that's where we're going to, is disaster with this.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Continued disaster all the way around, from a catastrophic patient disaster to what happened to Tristan. It's disaster everywhere. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not just nurses, but this affects patients. Patients are sadly going to have catastrophic things happen to them because we're supposed to be perfect.
Yes.
Ron, to the extent that you're comfortable sharing with us, can you take us back to August 7th, about 2 months ago, and tell us what happened?
Yeah, I can tell you the story. It was her day off that day. I knew it. I texted her around noon, and I asked her what her plans were for the day. And in typical kid fashion, she didn't answer back to
Right.
me. And in around 5 o'clock, I again texted her and said, "What'd you do today?" And again, I had no answer. And about an hour later, I texted her and I said, "Tristan, are you okay?" And I said, there was no answer. And then I told my wife then, I said, "I'm going over to Tristan's house to check on her, because this is out of the norm. She may go 3 or 4 hours without texting me, but then eventually I hear from her." So I drove over at her house, and I had a sinking feeling for some reason as I drove over, because she never responded. Pulled up in her driveway, and I noticed that the kitchen lights were on and the living room light was on, and I thought, "Oh, good, she's home." And pulled up in her driveway, and her dog, which is normally looking out the window, seeing who's here, um, was looking at me. And then I went up to the door, knocked on the door, and again, I had no answer to the door. So I had a key. I let myself in, called out her name. There was no answer, and I thought, where can she be at? I went into her living room, went into her bedroom, looked there. She was not there. Looked into the spare room that she had. She wasn't there. And as I turned around, leading up to her attic, the stairs there, she was hanging. And I could tell that she was there for some time. Her arms from her elbows down were completely blue. I reached out and touched her, and I could feel that she was cold and stiff. And very horrifying sight.
I'm sure.
I have no words. I can't
Well, she
imagine.
fell so hard too that she bit through her tongue completely.
Oh, Ron,
And her tongue was harshly. You could see that. I could see that clearly. And began asking her the questions of why.
I'm so sorry that you had to find her that way. I'm so sorry.
Me too.
What that no parent should ever ever.
No. She
Have to
should
see
have
that.
been attending my funeral, not me planning hers.
Yeah.
And it was just shock.
I,
The term shock.
I can't
Um,
imagine.
yeah,
I mean, almost like you're not seeing what you're seeing. Like,
I know. It took me a while to gather myself.
Of course.
I then immediately, probably after about 5 minutes, I called my wife and told her what had happened. I called her other sister, Day, called Sarah, and told them what had happened. In the background, I mean, I then called 911, of course, after I talked to them and told them. And I was just, all the sirens had stopped, and the neighbors were outside wanting to know what was going on. And it was just awful. It was just awful.
Sarah, again, to the extent that you're comfortable, what was that day like for you?
So it was a Monday. I'd just gotten off work and just kind of going about normal tasks. And then I actually heard from Day first. And she had called me and she was just a wreck. She couldn't get the words out. And it was kind of, Tristan, and then, your heart sinks because and it's one of those things where humanity just takes over. You're people think that your first reaction is to just drop to your knees and cry, but it's not. It's an overwhelming sense of numbness from just all this adrenaline and all these things just pumping through your body. And it's just like, I think I said, okay, like probably 10 times. Because how do you react to that? Because it's like, it's fight or flight. And you're just like, okay. You can't gather your thoughts. I think one of the first things I said to Dad was, do you want me to come over? Well, of course he wants me to come over, but it's like, you don't know
what to, yeah.
No.
You're in shock.
Because, you are. And, it's just, it's something that no family should ever have to go through. And it teaches you a lot about yourself, about how strong your family is, and kind of those experiences that a lot of people aren't going to understand. No one's going to understand what my dad went through in that moment.
No.
But what I can say is, as a kid, it is the most heartbreaking thing to watch your parent and to have to listen to your parent go through this. It is not worth it. It is not worth it. And I beg anyone that is listening to this that is struggling or has struggled, you are not alone. You are worth it. And people do care about you. And so please, please reach out. Get the help that you need. I know Tristan made an excuse a lot about money. So to anyone that is a mental health professional and wants to help nurses, people with PTSD, offer those services, reach out. Let's be good human beings and help people, because this is not something that should ever happen.
Yeah. Excellent point. We do need so much more mental health services for nurses and for medical professionals.
And you should not have to report it. You should be allowed to be a human.
Absolutely. Because that's what
the hospital
we all
doesn't
are.
need to know your mental state. I mean, a nurse needs to be able to talk to somebody in confidence without it getting back or being reported back to. I just feel that the demands on nurses right now, they need mental support and help, not because they're not capable of doing the job, but because of the job and the abuse that goes in that industry right now, that I think that they need somebody to talk to.
What
Yeah.
I find so sad is that mental health is there's such a stigma about it anyways, and I always correlate this to, like, if you've got depression or anxiety or anything that is debilitating, it's just like high blood pressure. It's just like diabetes. It's
Yeah.
not going to just turn off. You can't just turn it off. It doesn't go away. It is an actual imbalance in your brain. It's not anybody's fault. It's not the person's fault. It's not the family's fault. It's nobody's. It's a medical condition. And that needs to be, there's such a taboo with it. It's like, you don't want to be seen as weak. You want to be able to see that, you want people to think you're strong, that
Yeah.
you can just stop it. And that is not the case. That is not it. And to make people in this world feel like there's nothing that can be done, there's nothing that I can do, I'm always going to feel this way, this is how I'm going to feel the rest of my life, has got to be such a horrible, horrible place to be in.
Yeah. Ron, was there anything unusual about Tristan's home that you noticed that day
Well,
or afterwards?
when I saw her room, clothes were all over the floor. That was not like her. Um, well, maybe sometimes as a kid I remember teenager clothes, but clothes were all over the floor. Uneaten food was by her bed. Um, I did notice that, but my concern was where she was at. I didn't think about it,
Sure.
but it was sure noticed
Yeah.
when we went in to empty out her house. The
And that
signs of
was not
depression
normal
were all
for
over.
her.
Pardon?
That was not normal for her.
No,
Yeah.
no, no, it was not.
I think Erica had messaged to me something about finding positive affirmations around her
Oh, yes.
home.
Some
Like,
mantras.
yeah, do you
Oh,
mind
yes.
expanding on that? Were they little notes to herself, or were they plaques,
She had
or
notes on the refrigerator. She had notes around her house. I am worthy. I mean, I have them down in my basement. Even I can take pictures of them and send them to you.
oh,
Oh,
I
do you
have it
have
here.
one, Sarah?
Read that, Sarah.
Yeah, so the two most common ones that we found were I am wise, I am worthy, I am abundant. And then the second one is the love of life and all things living brings alignment and vitality that creates abundance.
wow.
That's what she had on her fridge. She had handwritten out.
That
So she was
sounds to
trying
me
to
like
bring herself
yeah.
positivity. She was trying
Oh,
hard
yeah. Yeah.
She was yeah.
she was wanting to almost talk to herself. It sounds like she was wanting to tell herself, don't feel like this. Like, you are,
Right.
you can pull through. You're good. You're, you know, um, that's what it sounds like. She was
She was
trying.
trying to self-help is what she
Yeah.
was trying to do.
Mhm.
And Tristan was the type of personality that she would always follow through with everything. I mean, for her to go out to Sacramento, California, to pack up her dog, pack up her cat, that takes courage.
Absolutely.
I mean,
On
not
your
many
own
people would do that
at a
by
young
themselves.
age. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I was worried sick the whole trip.
Yeah.
Every call, let me know where you're at. Answer my text because I
Yeah.
need to know where you're at and that you're okay. But she did that 3 days worth. She did it smartly, and but she
And that was kind of part of her, don't you think, also trying to help herself was by maybe leaving the hospital that she was at for so long and going specifically to California, where, as of right now is the only state with mandated staffing ratios. Don't you think that was maybe her way of trying to help herself?
I think that that was one of the big reasons. One, they had the Epic computer system. in the ER, and the nursing the patient ratio.
Mm-hmm.
I remember her telling me that, "Hey, Dad, I got my breaks. I get my breaks.
That's
15-minute breaks
amazing.
and half an hour
That's
break."
sad that that's a big
You-
deal for us, sadly. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
yeah,
it is.
why is it expected that we just don't have that everywhere? I mean, that's basic human needs. And most of the time we're told you can't have food or a drink at the nurse's station. So you don't
But
give us breaks,
prioritize
and
self-care.
and
Prioritize
we
self-care,
can't,
but don't drink water.
but we can't, yeah, but we can't eat or drink in front of other people at the nurses. It makes no sense, So
Yeah.
for us to have to be excited to get a break is
Well, you were
crazy.
talking about
Ridiculous.
robots earlier.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
absolutely.
So
In
did she
fact, she
enjoy
was-
traveling in California, would you say? More so?
Oh yeah, I think that she did. She liked it much better. I do think that some of the stories that she had told me while she was out there of what she saw played a direct role in her PTSD, and uh, I don't want to really share that, but it I think she did like it better. I think she was more comfortable. In fact, she went out for 3 months. She renewed her contract and stayed another 3 months.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So,
But she did come home once. She was getting homesick, and she actually came home. My birthday is on the 19th of February, and hers is on the 21st. And so she surprised me when her mom was getting a tattoo on her ankle by her daughter, and she'd asked me to come over and be moral support for her. And then all of a sudden, I felt arms come around me, and I thought it was Sarah at first. And I said, "Tris," I said, "Sarah."
She
And I
surprised
looked
you.
up at her. She surprised me. So that was nice.
that's a
Yeah.
sweet, sweet memory.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when did you discover the letter that Tristan had written?
The letter was discovered the next day. My daughter Day and Tristan were very, very close, and so they were going through a lot of different passwords to get into her laptop.
Okay.
And after probably the 30th one, they were able
Finally.
to open it. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
and that's when we saw the letter.
What
So were
was
you
your
there when
first
they
reaction?
found it, or your daughter actually found it and told you about it? Like, or were you guys together, or how did that happen?
Well, I think her cousin was the one that was operating the computer,
Mm-hmm.
and she was the one that she was the one that discovered it and then showed it to me,
Okay.
and then we shared it with everybody else that was around.
What was your initial reaction to that?
I had to read it twice to understand,
I'm
to
sure.
begin to understand what she was talking about. Um, I was shocked. I was surprised that she could write a letter like this, and at the end of the letter state that possibly taken her life. But I told everybody after everybody read it, I came into the living room and I said, "This story has to be told."
Yeah.
Did
That's
you
one thing that we're
realize
very
how?
fortunate.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
See, that's one
That-
thing we're very fortunate about as a family. There was no debate as to whether or not we were going to share this or talk about it.
That's-
It was pretty, yeah.
That's
We shared it at our
amazing.
memorial service. We didn't hide anything
Mhm.
because
for you.
people's going to ask too many questions, and let's get it out there. Let's be done with it.
Yeah.
Let's tell her story,
Yeah.
and we did.
Did you
And
realize how
starting-
many people were going to resonate with that letter, though? Did you,
Oh
in
my
any way,
gosh,
shape, or form, think?
no.
Yeah, because I will tell
No.
you, any healthcare worker that reads that, every word is exactly how
Yes.
we feel all the time. It's like as if we are writing that letter. That's
She
the only way
captured
that I
it.
can describe that letter is there's not one thing in it that you don't resonate with. Like it's
That you don't
yes,
feel
yes,
in your soul
yes.
because you've been
That's
there.
that's
Mhm.
me. And what a way to describe it, a letter to my abuser, because I was telling Erica, it's like almost like a domestic violence relationship.
It
You
is. There's
feel
so
It is.
many
you feel like you
similarities.
can't speak up. You feel like if you're going to get in more trouble if you say something. You're going to be punished if you speak about it. You have to take it. And what they do is they break down your soul. And I speak from experience. I
Empathy manipulation.
yeah. They and if you do speak out, and I spoke out, they don't care. It's like,
No.
this is how I'm feeling. This is how we're all feeling. And it's a very condescending look. And it's just like, I'm sorry, but there's no care. There's no compassion. So the way that she phrased that is spot on. I mean, absolutely spot on.
There's so many similarities with an abusive relationship if you think about it. You know, I'm staying for the kids. I'm staying for the patients.
Right.
You know, it really is similar. And the way that she wrote that
It
was
is.
so eloquent, because at first you think that it is about an abusive relationship, a typical romantic relationship, and then it unfolds so eloquently, skillfully, until you realize the abuser is the hospital, the healthcare system at large, that is abusing nurses
Mhm.
everywhere. And unfortunately, it was not only eloquent but prophetic. Unfortunately,
I think her purpose and her point of writing the letter is to help other people, to let
Mhm.
you know you're
Oh,
not
yeah.
alone.
Yeah.
But it's also to tell herself, I'm not alone either.
The part of the letter that says about we're told to just, what could you do to make it better? How could you do this differently is something we hear all the time. And
yeah.
it
Which is
that
victim
right
blaming,
there is
ultimately.
is abuse. That is abuse from the system. That is abuse on how dare we be the ones that are injured, cursed at, spit at, bitten,
Yeah.
possibly shot, stabbed.
And
How
then
dare
said, what could you have done differently?
and then told how
I don't
could
know.
we have
Maybe I
fixed
could
it?
have gotten my crystal ball and predicted 5 minutes ahead in the future. I don't know. What could you have done differently? That's what I want nurses to start asking in response. When managers or admin asks them, what could you have done differently? I want nurses' knee-jerk response to become, what could you have done differently to protect your staff?
Exactly. And that should be their number one responsibility, to make sure everybody's safe so they can treat the patients.
Yeah, and they don't want you to
And
report it. They don't really want
no,
the hospital. It's all about the hospital being seen in a bad light. That is their number one thing, is to
absolutely it is.
protect their face. So, I mean, in hearing that, it sounds like a letter to her abuser is all of it. It's the abuse that nurses take on a daily basis, all the way from everyone, from everything. It's exactly what it is.
And it shouldn't have to be that way. I mean, if
No.
there's so many nurses feeling this way, there's power in numbers, and
That's what I always
we
say.
have to march that forward. We got to get them on board and march that forward to our senators or state representatives. I mean, let's get this changed, and let's get the administrators, the CEOs. Let's give them a serious heads up. Hey, the way you're doing business isn't right.
Yeah.
The way you're treating your employees is not right.
What
Yeah.
would you
And-
guys think if a nurse or anybody that's listening to this podcast thinks, what can I do to help? Like, is there, even if it's just a tiny thing, Sarah, do you have a suggestion for, I mean, I know me and Erica talked, we have ideas, but like, what do you guys as a family discuss?
I mean, it's a very difficult thing, because sometimes the way that you're able to help isn't the way that people need you to help. And so,
Okay.
I always tell people, if you're able to, just listen. Just
Yeah.
listen. You're not going to understand, but you can listen, because sometimes it just has to be on a human level. I mentioned it earlier. If you are a therapist, offer discounted rates to healthcare professionals, to emergency responders, those kind of
Yes, they
things.
need it.
Exactly. The system is not going to do it for them. We actually have to just become better humans. If you have friends in the nursing community, you all can speak out, share my sister's story, continue to share yours, make them listen, because the only way that any change can come is if the hand is forced.
I think everybody needs to mail this letter off to every representative, every
Absolutely.
CEO,
Yeah. Share
every
it,
higher
tweet
up.
it,
It should
post
be on
it,
everybody's desk and everybody's email.
tag your representatives, post it online, send it once a week
That
to your
is
legislators.
a simple, I mean, essentially free, unless you're mailing and put a stamp. It's one of the easiest things that can be done, but it needs to
Yeah.
be brought in the face
Oh, yeah.
of everybody that either has the potential to make change for healthcare workers or the ones that are continuing on a daily basis to abuse all of us. They all need to see it and they all need to read it. Every one of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we should be using it in context of legislation that
Mhm.
unfortunately Congress is stalling on. You mentioned safe staffing, and Tristan alludes to that in the letter. Well, there is federal legislation pending. It's the Nurse Staffing Standards for Hospital Patient Safety and Quality of Care Act. And it has passed the House of Representatives, and it has been sitting for quite a while with the Senate going absolutely nowhere. And it's a brilliant piece of legislation. I've read it from end to end, and it's so good. It would give us federal mandated ratios comparable to California. But the reality is that this is reintroduced every single year with every Congress, and they let it die without even being voted on every single year. So think about that. Even in 2020, when we were healthcare heroes and there was clapping and pots and pans banging and, we were angels on earth, right? Even that year, the Senate didn't bother to even hold a vote on it. They don't care about patient safety. They sure as hell don't care about nurses and nurse safety. But that's what I think everyone should be pushing for. There are a handful of states that have pending legislation specific to their state for ratios. Oregon just recently became the second state. That takes effect next year, I believe. But we need to be pushing our representatives. And I think
This should just
Tristan's
be
letter
across
is a
the
great
board.
way.
I mean, it shouldn't need to be that a state to state is having to fight over this. I mean,
Right.
it should be everywhere. It should just be everywhere. And I mean, Erica, why do you think that that it just gets lost every year and nobody votes on it? Like, is it because there's other things
money
that are
money and
that's
power?
what I'm getting at.
Because healthcare organizations have billions of dollars that they readily spend on lobbyists to
so if you don't vote on it, they will give you more. They'll give you more money. I see. Okay, that's what I'm trying to understand. Is that's sad. But
it is.
It should make you angry, is what it should. I read some statistics. 93% of healthcare workers reported stress, 86% anxiety, 77% frustration, and 76% exhaustion or burnout. 3/4 said they were overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But for context, it's so frustrating and honestly disgusting that politics has any place in the health anything.
Yeah.
They should not be allowed to dictate your health. They should not be allowed to make money off of people's suffering.
Yeah, exactly.
And now we're seeing it trickle down.
Where the money is going. The public needs to be asking, especially these nonprofits, where is the money going? It's going in their pocket. even the nonprofits. It's going to their $1 million bonuses. Meanwhile, female nurses have a suicide rate twice as high as the non-nurse female population.
Right. And that's what another thing they were saying is like a lot of the ones for years, that it's been physicians that, have held the number one spot for like healthcare workers, but it's because it's male predominant versus female predominant, which is a big difference that people aren't realizing. They say that men typically, suicidal wise are more likely to actually go through with it. So that's why those type of professions, and we are a female predominant profession, but yes, like another statistic I read was 38% of nurses have suicidal thoughts at some point. It's the number one of all professions. So over 1/3 of nurses at some point in their nursing career feel that way or have felt that way. And that's of the ones that are willing to admit it. So imagine what those statistically, what the number really is. I mean, I can tell you,
and the irony.
I did. I mean, I would be one of those, part of that statistic,
I think we need to flood our senators with letters.
Yes.
Everybody out here so many people have resonated with Tristan's letter. If they would take the time out, put a stamp on, mail it. Let's flood. Let's send a mail that like they've never seen before.
What is your hope? What would you like to see come of this horrible tragedy?
I would like to see a safe patient to nurse ratio.
Amen.
I mean, if you have the labor there to do the job, nurses wouldn't be stressing out or having nightmares. Did I forget to do this, to do that?
Yeah.
Because you had 8 other patients that day that you were trained to help. That would be the number one goal. And the number 2 goal, I think, would be unionize.
You're speaking my language, Ron.
I think that nurses need to have a voice.
Yes.
And what's going on. And if the administrators aren't listening, then unionize so they will listen.
That's right.
That is, you can't bury this under the rug. I don't think. I'm not going to let this go. And I'm going to continue pressing forward to it. And I'm going to continue to work with Erica. And I want something done about it. My daughter's passing is not going to be in vain. I think that her letter is very powerful. I think it's resonated with the nursing world, and let's get the nursing world together and let's march. Let's
move forward.
Something done.
Yeah,
because we are all Tristan, right? Every nurse feels I am Tristan. I have been Tristan at some point. I am still Tristan. We get it. We feel it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so. I'm not going to stop.
I know you just started a GoFundMe. Sarah, do you want to tell us a little bit about the GoFundMe?
Yeah, so originally the GoFundMe was to help cover all of the expenses that come with death. And it's kind of evolved into something different because, the response has been overwhelming. I mean, hundreds and thousands of shares and the reactions, and it's just you're hearing all these stories, and it's like we don't want anyone to feel silenced anymore. It's kind of it's a purpose, and that's what this given us. So this GoFundMe has changed its course, and it's now going to be used. The funds will be used to help share Tristan's story, to help promote it. Dad mentioned t-shirts. He mentioned marching. Maybe we get some protests together, some peaceful protesting, signs, all that kind of stuff. You want to know how you can help. Let's help. Let's make a change. And so we haven't really discussed too many of the ideas. I have a lot in my head as well,
Me too.
Just with her letter and, but I think that
I would like to see Tristan's letter as a full page ad in something like the New York Times, the Washington Post, LA Times, one of those huge publications, because the country needs to see this. And
Right.
we need for these healthcare organizations to have the spotlight on them, to have the negative publicity, because they are the ones behind the mental health crisis. Let's be real. The mental health crisis that their employees are suffering, they're the ones behind it.
Yeah.
I agree.
And the fact that we've allowed this bully to do this for so long is absolutely insane, and it's that fear of, well, if I say something, I could be reprimanded, and with Tristan's letter, it kind of is a catalyst saying, you know what? No, I am going to say something. And then another person and another person. And next thing you know, you're hearing so many people say, I validate this. I am this. I have felt this. These are my stories.
It takes courage to move forward because it's all unknown. And once you start marching and you know what the mission is, then we're not going to stop until the mission's complete.
The hospital also planted a tree in Tristan's honor, didn't they? Yeah.
They informed me, well, I actually informed them of Tristan's death because I didn't know she had any benefits at the hospital or anything. And which she didn't. She was set up after she basically quit the hospital, she was set up as a
per
call
diem
nurse.
Yeah.
To where she could set her own schedule. She wanted to go in for
Right.
4 hours, she could. But then I heard back, and I think it was from her team leader that told me that they were going to do this and we could be a part of it if we wanted to. At the time, I thought, this is a nice gesture. But they did let the emergency room people come out and tie ribbons to the tree. And I kind of felt it was a nice gesture. But on the other hand, I felt like they're partly responsible for this.
Yeah. That was
and
my
so
feeling.
It's kind of a two-edged sword of my feelings about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's like,
well, and I'd be willing to bet the tree wasn't the higher ups. It was probably her coworkers that encouraged it.
Well, it was probably their media relations person making sure that the proper optics were being
they
used,
said it was
if I
for
had to
suicide
guess.
awareness, and it was I don't know. It was
I wanted to end on a good note, and I wonder if you might be willing to share the greased door story, Ron.
I want to hear this.
My wife tells the story much better than I can. She was the one that found all this. Tristan was a teenager. Like all teenagers, they try to sneak out of the house, and did. And Tristan had this bright idea of taking Vaseline or grease to the side of the door because we had an older home and it creaked when you opened it. And so she greased up the whole side of the door and on the handle itself. And my wife went to open the door and she said it almost threw her back into the other room because it was so slippery by the doorknob. And she said she started to look and she goes, what is on the door?
Did it work? Did she sneak out?
Well, yeah, she was gone. I mean, this was the next morning that Lois found it.
Oh my gosh.
She found her own WD-40, whatever.
It was Vaseline is what I heard.
Vaseline.
So, yeah, that was
what a mess.
That was hilarious. And so I think Tristan had a confession to make that, yeah, she did this. But that was good time memories.
Yeah. Sarah, what about you? How would you like us to remember Tristan?
I want everyone to remember Tristan for the positive beautiful woman she was, the helpful person who cared more about other people than she cared about herself. She was a social butterfly. She loved hanging out with her friends, having fun, and I think that even though the message that we're going to be passing is a little bit more dark, it's important to remember that she still was a human also. And that, it wasn't always like this. And, you can take the good memories and you can keep them close with you. And so that's what I'm going to choose to do while continuing to put her words out there and to put her story out there, because it's bigger than just writing on a laptop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you said, we are all Tristan, and she resonated there. So we got to keep it moving.
And we will.
We will.
Mm-hmm.
We'll stop.
Anything we can do to help, we're there. So
Okay. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And you can find her letter on all of my social media platforms. I know, Sarah, you have it on yours. Do you want to share any of your handles?
Yeah, sure. So it's on my Instagram in my bio. The link is in my bio. It is Sarah with an H _ Beth Smith.
Okay. And also on your Facebook, I believe, Ron. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And is it just Ron Smith?
The GoFundMe link, is that also there too? Or it should...
We haven't really talked about that yet. Did you put it there? I don't know.
I just put it on my Instagram. So you can, I have a highlight right before we started. There's a highlight, and I'll put it on the playlist on TikTok as well.
I think I'm going to let Sarah handle that aspect of it. I started a new job 3 weeks ago, and I'm trying to learn a new job and work on this. And
well, we will link it to the podcast as well, so anybody can find it. A link on this podcast, I'll put it on my social medias as well. So we'll make sure it's everywhere so that people can find it for sure. And
also to the National Suicide Hotline, which again is 988 or 1-800-442-HOPE. And you can call or text 24/7.
Continue to continue to share. Let us know where you're sharing from. Don't stop.
Yeah. Thank you both for your bravery.
Thank you.
I know this wasn't easy and you're dealing with unimaginable things, but thank you for your bravery and coming forward and sharing Tristan's story.
You guys are amazing. We will not let her be forgotten.
Thank you.